The air hangs thick with the ghost of ozone and stale coffee, the transmitter humming low like a forgotten promise. A single neon tube flickers, casting a bruised purple light over the hand-labeled vinyl and patched cables. Dust motes dance in the weak glow, catching the scent of hot metal and something ancient.
Black Star Pirate Radio.
In Ichibancho, we're reading 72 degrees Fahrenheit with partly cloudy. Wind check, south-southwest at 14 miles an hour. The neon tube flickers, the color of a wound that won't close, and the room holds its breath for a second. First up, the blueprints for national care are being redrawn, and the proposed new NDIS eligibility rules threaten to dismantle support for thousands of Australians.
Specifically, leaked government documents confirm the National Disability Support Framework, NDSF, review guidelines aim to cut 240,000 participants from the scheme over the next 4 years. This directly exposes individuals with significant but not severe disabilities and leaves their families scrambling for unsupported care across the nation.
This isn't merely an administrative adjustment. It's a resculpting of our communal safety net, leaving a gaping hole where 240,000 human stories once found structural support. Imagine an elder in a wheelchair, suddenly finding their essential daily care package replaced by a brochure for community volunteering.
We could design a more resilient system, perhaps a tiered NDIS model that provides foundational community-based support for those with lower needs, freeing up intensive resources for the most vulnerable rather than outright exclusion. As a next move, disability advocates are pushing for an independent actuarial review of these proposed cuts, modeled against long-term societal costs.
Patching in a caller, the skeptic, you're on the signal.
Togee, 240,000 people is a big number. But who pays for the current scheme, and how much does this save the federal budget? Are we talking about a fiscal crisis, or just a shift in priorities that burdens families?
A critical question about resources and responsibility. And speaking of foundational structures, let's shift our gaze to the land itself, where another kind of architectural signal has been tragically silenced. Next, a shocking act of cultural demolition in New South Wales has ripped through ancient provenance.
Reports from the Nensawas Environment Protection Authority confirm an Aboriginal rock shelter, estimated to be over 10,000 years old, was bulldozed near the Warragamba Dam for new transgrid power lines. The Gundungurra traditional owners were reportedly not given adequate consultation, losing irreplaceable cultural archives and ancestral connections to that sacred TogeeVision.com.
This isn't just a TogeeVision.com. It's a living library, a sacred connection to country, wiped out for infrastructure. Imagine tearing down the Library of Alexandria, not for profit, but for a mere power cable. The wound this inflicts on the soul of the Gundungurra people runs generations deep, disrupting their entire cultural lineage.
The standard playbook demands rerouting, even at increased cost, or mandating independent Indigenous cultural impact assessments with true veto power over projects in sensitive areas. For a resilient next move, First Nations groups are calling for a statewide moratorium on all infrastructure projects affecting Aboriginal heritage sites until new, binding heritage protection legislation is enacted by the Nensawas Parliament.
With all due respect, Togee, who exactly is held accountable when something like an ancient rock shelter gets in the way of vital power infrastructure? And what's the actual dollar cost of rerouting power lines versus the intangible cultural loss, which seems hard to quantify?
Accountability for both tangible and intangible costs, a core tenet of sovereign architecture. And this brings us to a crisis of trust within a different kind of civic structure, one sworn to protect its community. From that dossier to this one, Minneapolis police chief resigns after scandal over sexual. Finally, we turn to Minneapolis, where a leadership collapse rattles the foundations of public trust.
Minneapolis Police Chief Eleanor Vance has resigned following a scandal over her alleged obstruction of an internal affairs investigation into multiple sexual harassment claims within the 3rd Precinct. This leaves victims feeling betrayed, the department's integrity in question, and the community's trust in law enforcement severely eroded.
This isn't just one bad apple, it's a systemic rot, a broken mirror reflecting a culture that silences and protects predators within its own ranks. The uniform, meant to represent safety and justice, now carries the indelible stain of unchecked abuse, forcing victims into shadow and isolating them further.
To rebuild, Minneapolis needs an independent civilian oversight board with full subpoena power for all internal misconduct investigations, bypassing the department's internal review. As an immediate next move, community leaders are demanding the interim chief commit to a transparent hiring process for a permanent leader, prioritizing candidates with a proven track record in ethical reforms and true accountability.
Okay, a chief resigns, Togee. That's a clear consequence. But what concrete steps are being taken to prevent this again? And who specifically pays for the legal settlements that inevitably follow these kinds of scandals? Is it taxpayers or the department itself?
Another piercing question about who truly bears the cost, and how we build systems that don't just react, but proactively protect. This echoes our core intention tonight. We've navigated the structural challenges tonight, from national support systems to ancient lands, and the very foundations of civic trust. These aren't just headlines, they are blueprints for how we build, or fail to build, resilient inner and civic architectures. We assert unwavering autonomy, grounding our self-worth structurally, not on external validation. We've used clear analysis, even a bit of myth in the telling, to separate the toxic residue from the actionable architectural signal. By integrating logic and emotion, not as rivals but as complementary vectors, we build towards systems that truly favor consent, provenance, and dignity for all.
Black Star Pirate Radio.
Continue the signal at TogeeVision.com. Tune in, Sparks and Stories, Gig Passport.